Today, I've got a pretty cool interview to show you. I was with my friend Amy Munsternam, who is a psychotherapist as well as a counselor, and she's been doing this for about 25 years. She started off her career in 1997, and she was dealing with adults with substance abuse as well as mental health issues, and then she moved over to a community mental health center, and she worked there for about 10 years. And she was dealing with people who experienced severe mental illnesses. And then in 2012, she moved to New Zealand. And then in 2013, she set up her own private practice and has been doing that since then. Today was an awesome interview. I really enjoyed it. We talked about a whole range of issues. We talked about depression, anxiety, prescription culture, just a whole load of stuff, dealing with pretty much the everyday grind of life. And it was fun. We kind of riffed. We got along. I really enjoyed it. Definitely one of my more serious interviews that I've done, so I was a bit intimidated coming into this one. But I had a blast. So enjoy. Now, as far as promo goes, on the 21st of August, I have Line 'em Up comedy show out in Newtown at the Newtown Social Club. Due to the COVID situation at the moment, we have restricted seating, so there are 9 tickets left now. We have sold over half. Which isn't that hard considering how many we can sit, but nonetheless, we have sold over half. That's still going ahead. And then on the 23rd, I have Dope As Comedy Show, which will be a Sunday, run by the lovely Anya. Check that one out. That's always a blast. Really kick-ass lineup on that one, too. Apart from that, that's all I have at the moment. Check my Facebook page for any upcoming events. I will post like a whole list of pretty much everything I'm doing. But shows I want you to focus on, Line 'em Up and Dope As. Those are the 2 ones I'm keen. Oh, and Medicine comedy. I will be doing that in September. Now, anything else? No sponsors? No, sir. No, ma'am. Not today. Haha, bone dry. Now, follow me on Instagram. Smash and subscribe, the like button. And check me out on Facebook. Lovely, guys. Enjoy today's episode. Let me know what you think. And stay healthy. All right. Bye. We're live. Hello. How are you?
Great.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Exciting. Yeah. Now, we were just talking about before. We were just talking about like the growth period in my life that my friend and I went on.
Yeah.
And I think it was just really interesting because we were talking about like the big thing on like introspection, I think, as well, and just like this real sense of just being very, very self-aware. But I guess the first thing is like, can you be self-aware? What's your trick for being like self-aware and self-critical, but in like a positive way?
Right.
Like I think because there's that classic thing where it's like, I hate myself and I do all this crazy, I was so stupid when I said X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, it can also be like very positive as well. But like it depends on how you address it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you're talking about the inner critical voice.
Yeah, big
that
time.
We all have, right? Which is strongly associated with high levels of anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And no surprise, probably.
No.
Right? So I think it's often the tone, right, that you hear yourself talking to yourself in, right? So if I make a mistake or, do something stupid and I've got this voice in my head that's shouting at me, telling me what an idiot I am and how I should do better and, how could I be so stupid? I mean, that's what that does actually in the brain is it just, your amygdala can't differentiate between that coming from the inside or that coming from the outside. Right? So it's kind of like having a little internal bully, or a bully that lives in your head. And I don't know about you, but, I've been bullied as a kid. And
Never.
No.
No, yeah, no. No way, Amy.
No. So it sends off the same signals in your head. It makes you feel anxious. It makes you shut down, right? So if you can like acknowledge what.
Hey, can you get that mic and just turn it perfect?
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Nice one. Almost like you want to be just speaking right into the center.
Is that better?
Oh, heyo. Amazing.
Yeah. So what was I saying?
Well, I think, you were talking about, and I just wanted to chime in there on the whole, somebody once said to me, like, don't be self-deprecating even in a humorous sense, because your mind can't really tell the difference.
Right.
Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's, any kind of self-flagellation sort of feeds that
negative kind of opinion.
Exactly. And, I suppose it depends on kind of you have to notice the state, right, that it puts you in. If I can make a joke about myself and not feel like ashamed or put down, but I can kind of take a step back from it and I can laugh at myself, because I think that's a gift, right? To be able to laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. So I think it depends on the person. Mm-hmm. And, if it works for you, like we always ask people, like, is that a helpful thing or an unhelpful thing? If it's helpful, great. But if it's not, then maybe it's time to do something different.
Yeah, kind of cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I think a lot of the times you get people are aware of things, but even when you frame it, because in my mind, therapy is more of a tool to kind of give the person who's going through it a wider perspective on things. And it's merely like I think a lot of people go through therapy or go into therapy with the idea that the therapy itself is going to fix everything for them, rather than it being like a tool. Do you find that being the case?
Yeah, well, I think there is a misconception about that if I go to therapy and I just talk about all this stuff, right, that I'm somehow going to get better, but you have to take action. You have to, develop or implement the tools that you're taught. You have to make different choices, right? So just coming in and talking to a therapist for an hour a week, there's a hell of a lot of hours outside of that, that you have to be accountable and mindful, and, you have to do something different to get a different outcome, right? So
change the behavior pattern. Yeah, that's so wild.
And we often think that we have to change the thinking before we change the action, but it's not.
Isn't that very hard though, because the actions kind of reinforce the thinking?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if we sort of wait for the thinking to change before we do anything different, we'll probably be waiting around for a while, because thoughts just come and we can't control them. We can't control what comes into our head. We have, our brain creates relationships, right? And so, there's a thing in acceptance and commitment therapy that if you tell someone, don't think about your favorite flavor of ice cream. What are
Instantly
you thinking about?
Thinking about your favorite ice
Right.
cream. Yeah, of course.
So if I'm telling myself, don't think this, don't think that, or I try to kind of make it change the thought in some way, there's some, if that's helpful and that works, great. But people spend a whole lot of time really trying to change the thought, before they take the action. So does that make sense?
Totally.
What I'm saying?
Yeah,
right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, I wanted to touch on a tiny bit about, so I was researching a few studies just in regards to anxiety and depression. And the first thing you come across is in the Western world, we have incredibly high amounts of both of those things.
Totally.
But is that a symptom of us being in the Western world, or is it just a symptom of us having the ability to diagnose all those things in the Western world comparatively to everything else?
Yeah, well, I'm no expert on cross-cultural psychology, so it's hard for me to speak to that.
Sure.
But, I do think that, okay, I just want to make a qualifier here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that I am not a scientist or researcher. I read the science and the research, but I'm not doing it. I don't think of myself as an expert necessarily on, any specific topic. But I have been sitting in the room with a lot of people for a long time, right? So I guess the comments I'm going to make are based on that,
sure,
right? On my experience as a psychotherapist that's been in the field for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair enough?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that we tend to want to put people's problems in, to put them in particular boxes, right? And I think it's become kind of easy just to call everything depression or anxiety, when if you dig a little bit deeper, there's more going on most of the time, and I think that's what we miss. We don't take the time to really understand what might be causing someone's depression and how that depression could actually serve as a function for that person and be protective in some ways, or how a person's anxiety is needed in a way, that it protects them from something else, or it's the result of a behavior that protects them from something else. So I think we just have to dig a little bit deeper. For a lot of people, if you think about depression as a state of like really shutting down, right, and hiding out and, not putting yourself out there in the world, well, that might make some sense if you've had some shit happen in your life where you've really been hurt by people, or, you push yourself too hard that your body just goes, no, stop.
Yeah,
right? So I think that's how I view it in my practice, is I try to understand it in terms of like it making sense for the person at this moment in time, rather than just seeing it as a cluster of symptoms that need to be treated.
Right. And is it usually like a rational result? Like, so for example, someone going through depression, is it usually like a rational response to something that's happened? From maybe like a biological standpoint, from that idea of like a protective coating.
Right. I think, I don't know if I would use the word rational, but maybe functional, right? Like to understand the function behind it.
Right.
Which not everyone sees it that way, and definitely, I'm not saying that depression and anxiety aren't real problems or, don't have a biological basis, but, everything's a combination of biology, temperament, genetics, and experiences, and, I just think that we're a little bit quick to want to get rid of the symptoms when we need to listen to the symptoms. We need to understand what these symptoms are trying to tell us. What does this
That's a
person
very interesting
need?
perspective. Yeah.
If people have a lot of anxiety, they just want to shut it down, right? They want to like, give me my benzos.
Yeah.
Get rid of this shit. I don't want to feel this because it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough that it's uncomfortable, but we have it for a reason. Like, why do we have our amygdala? Why do we have the fear center of our brain? It warns us against threat, and I think that the real, the threats that are, we're not out in the desert anymore. We're not running away from saber-tooth, right? But we fear rejection. We fear humiliation. We fear exclusion, right? We fear all that social stuff. Like that's I don't know. Is that?
No, I think you're totally right. I think what's happened. No, 100%.
Like what you and your friends talk about, or
yeah. Listen, we talk about booze. We talk about music.
Rugby.
Yeah, rugby. I am not a rugby head at all. I just the only sport that I've actually like really gotten into is ultimate frisbee. Yeah, look at me. Yeah, kind of makes sense.
You sound like the guys I used to date in the 90s.
Really? Yeah. Frisbee was a thing in the 90s?
Ultimate frisbee.
Ooh, yeah.
It's kind of like
the games
in the early
evolved,
90s,
baby.
Right? We had the kind of the resurgence of the wannabe hippies, or granolas. We called
granolas?
It. Yeah, we called it
because they eat granola all the time?
Yeah, wear Birkenstocks.
I've got a joke about Birkenstocks.
Go.
I said I've been working on it. It's like I look like a guy who owns a pair of Birkenstocks. Somebody said to me, I look like a guy who owns a pair of Birkenstocks, but can't afford them. The fuck does that mean? And I don't own a pair of Birkenstocks. Too expensive. It's crazy. Like Birkenstocks are like the most. It's weird though, right? Because they're the most
really
expensive. They're the most expensive shoe for like the people who can afford it the least. It doesn't make any sense.
I have a pair, but my dog ate them.
Really?
Really. Yeah.
Was it like the white leather ones, or
no,
were they?
it's just black,
Yeah,
basic
nice.
Arizonas, you know.
Yeah. What kind of dog do you have?
I have 2 dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me about my dogs.
Mm.
I have 2 golden retrievers
Oh,
named Francesca and Florence.
lovely. Now, are they purebreds as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't they always have like issues like hip dysplasia
No,
and stuff like
stop.
that?
No.
No, okay.
Let's talk about the good things about my dogs, not their
I swear to God,
hip
if I could
issues.
have dream job
Mhm.
would be to be dog walker. If it could pay enough money to support myself, just walking dogs.
I know.
Yeah, it would.
You'd be blissed out all the
It
time.
would be lovely. Let me get this a bit
Oh,
closer.
did I do something there?
No, you're
Oh,
fine.
okay.
I can just see. I can see you struggling, Amy. Just chill out. All right. Calm down.
I'm losing my shit.
Like we've got, because you've been over to our place, right? Have you been over to our place?
No.
Okay, we've got a dog called Thelma.
Oh,
Have
I
you met
love that.
Thelma?
No.
Yeah, she's
what
like-
kind is she?
Boxer lab, like a mix, but she's like 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
So she's very, very, very old for a dog. And
That is old.
Yeah, and so she's like, I don't even think she knows me anymore.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's sad.
I like that name.
Thelma. We were gonna get a
Yeah.
cat called Louise.
Yeah.
Mix it in. And they drove off a cliff. You know. We need to finish the role play. Jesus.
Oh, dear.
So you went to because you're originally from the States, right?
Yes,
And then
I'm
you
from
moved to
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
And is that where? Because you went to where'd you go to university?
The University of Nebraska.
University of Nebraska.
Yeah.
Wow, you really straight out of your
I
comfort
really,
zone.
yeah.
There, didn't you? Wow, so brave.
Nebraskans don't leave Nebraska. It's a miracle I'm here.
What's Nebraska known for?
Corn,
Really?
steaks, Omaha steaks.
Oh my. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Football.
Yeah.
Nebraska Husker football.
That's right. You guys have a
Wearing
big team.
red on Saturdays.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only wear red
Hate
on Sundays.
the color red.
Did you do your whole degree like at Nebraska?
I did my undergrad and my master's degree there. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when did you come to New Zealand?
2008.
2008. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense then. Right.
Yeah.
What made you want to come? Was it your partner?
Yeah. So my husband's a Kiwi. So he got a job here.
Nice. And did you guys? I've heard this story. You guys met when you were over in the States, right?
Yeah. I was working at a brew pub.
That's right. Yeah. And he
Yeah.
had the Kiwi accent.
He did. And we had a competition.
And you lost, and you dated him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We had a flirting competition to see who could win him over. And I
Nice.
won.
Yeah, it's
I
weird.
guess. Yeah.
You kind of won. I mean, you won the
Yeah.
competition, but you know.
Yeah.
Jeez, I wanted to. Yeah. See, I moved here in 2004, and it's like a weird. I even
How old
think
were you when you moved here?
9 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I moved
That's
from
about the
Spain.
same. Oh, from Spain.
Because we lived in Spain for 2 years.
That's right.
So 95 to 2000 and like early 2003,
Mm-hmm.
and then Spain or 2002. I can't quite remember. And then Spain from like 2002, late 2002 to like late 2004.
Wow.
And then we came over here.
oh,
yeah.
wow.
And then went to high school here, and then finished, went traveling, did get 2 years of a gap year,
Mm-hmm.
came back, started my degree, and then went to Melbourne for like 7 months,
Yeah.
which was like a blast. It
Yeah.
was so much fun. Actually, you know what? I want to talk to you about that. How come, like, why do people do so much? Like, it's almost like the classic thing is like, you know, the hard situations kind of make you realize so much more about yourself.
Sure.
But like the time where I did like the most kind of self-exploration and development was after going through a breakup.
yeah.
Like, why is that? I know it's a very broad, open-ended question,
Yeah.
but it was just like very, almost like the most confronting
Did
period.
you do the breaking up, or were you broken
Yeah,
up
but it
with?
wasn't really my choice, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, maybe at the most basic,
Mhm.
right? You could say you're wondering what's wrong with me.
Yeah, right. That's all the
Right?
time, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, that might be part of it. Like, or what was it about this relationship that didn't work? You know, what do I need to understand about the way I am in relation to myself and in relation to others,
Sure.
right?
Well, that's
So,
100% what it was, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
you know, we all go into relationships with a working model
Mhm.
of relationships, right? So that we learn from our parents and how we see them relating to each other, but also like how they relate to us, how we related to them,
Mhm.
right, as kids. Because we all figure out, this is who I have to be loved,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
So then you carry that shit with you into a relationship. And then the other person's like, wait, that's not what I want. Or
Mhm.
that's, you know, I don't know.
No, you're right. You have like a subconscious model that you pick
Totally.
up, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just like, well, hold on.
It's called the internal working model.
Is that what is that for everything?
Well, that's, I guess I'm just speaking to the relationship, but, or, you know, the internal working model of relationships. But, you know, we all have schemas. Have you heard of schemas? You know, deeply held core beliefs that, you know, are pretty pervasive and can be quite pathological. Depends on the extreme of that schema, but, you know, they operate under the surface or implicitly, and you don't even know they're operating until they get activated.
Right.
And you're like, why am I freaking out?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just not even aware of it.
Yeah. And you look for the information that confirms your schema, right? So if I have a failure schema, or I think that I'm, you know, not as good as other people at my job or whatever, and then if I get a performance review, right, and it's got, you know, 95% of it is positive, you know, my schema is just going to hone in on that one statement that says you could improve on this, right? So, I mean, that's not going to be true all the time, but that's kind of how it works, is that you know, you have a negativity bias, and so you hone in on the
it confirms
on the stuff that confirms your belief, right?
Yeah, of course.
So then you're not learning anything new. You're not standing back from it going, hang on a second, you know, am I taking anything else in? You know, It's
very challenging to confront those things as well, because it's so much of who you are.
Totally.
You know, it's who you're made up of.
Yeah.
Even with like political beliefs and things like that.
Yeah.
To look at like a different perspective is to almost like be very humbling, because you can be proved wrong in something that you've touted for so long that you think is correct, you know? And then it's like a lot of humility comes in. It's like, you know, I was wrong. Like I was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's like a very tough thing to do. I wonder if it's tougher for males than it is. I don't know. I just feel like, because there's that whole thing that it's slowly fading away, but there's like this masculine idea of this, you know, exactly. Yeah, I'm a man and I'm right, and I know what I believe in, you know, and don't back down.
Yes.
And it's like to be able to destroy that, and it's the ego, right? Like kind of destroy the ego and then rebuild it from the perspective, like a new perspective. Yeah. Is very tough.
We don't like to be vulnerable.
No, that's very true. Yeah. But it's like being vulnerable is where you like learn the most.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, because if you think about it, right? Like if we're all walking around with our defenses up all the time, right? We're not going to make authentic connections with other people. We're not going to be open. We're going to be closed. We're going to be constricted. We're not going to be expanded. So we're not going to be curious about anything. Yeah. Right? We're going to be like, you know, this is how it is, and I don't care about what you think or how you feel, or, you know, and honestly, I think that's what's mostly fucked up about how we're living these days.
Do you think that's what it is?
I do.
I want to segue into that. Like, why is it like within at least my age group, you know, where there is these very high rates of like depression and anxiety amongst that? Yeah. And why is it within that demographic of people that it seems to come out the most? And it seems like it's happening younger and younger and younger. Yeah. It's younger I looked up a statistic recently where it's much younger in the States than it is in New Zealand. Like the average age, I believe, here in New Zealand is like 24 or something like that. Right. But why is it? Yeah. Why?
I brought a few stats with me.
Let's see what you got.
Did I even? So what's this say? It says 1 in 5 will have a serious mood disorder at some time in their life, right? So for New Zealanders, right? 1 in 7 young people in New Zealand will experience a major depressive disorder, and 1 in 5 will experience some kind of serious mood disorder before the age of 24.
What's a serious mood disorder classified as?
So like a serious mood disorder would be something like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, you know, major depressive disorder would be a serious mood disorder. But yeah, I was hoping we would talk about this because I'm really curious about it. How old are you?
24.
24. Okay, so you're in that demographic. You're in your last year of adolescence.
I know, it's like the fun. Then I can start doing all sorts of drugs, drinking. My brain's developed.
You're like shit.
Yeah, you ready? You ready for 26, baby?
It's like, oh man, now I can think about the consequences. Yeah. Damn it. So, yeah, you know what I hear a lot in my practice, because I do work with a fair amount of young people between 18 and 25. And there's so much social anxiety, right? There's this fear of awkwardness. I have never heard the word awkward used so much.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, to be awkward. Ooh, I don't want to be awkward. You know, because I'm like, well, why don't you just talk to them?
Yeah.
You know, like, why don't you tell them how you feel about that? You know, ooh, that would be awkward. So that's one thing. I just don't, I think possibly, because everything is done via text, right? Like, I'll find myself often, young people will be telling me about a conversation that they've had with someone. And they're like, oh, what was their facial expression like? Or what did they, you know, how did they say, oh, no, this was all over text.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, right. So you miss all the nuances of communication via text, right? You lose the things that our nervous system needs to process information, right? Like tone of voice, facial expression, body language, movement. So I think that's part of the problem. And again, I am not an expert. I've not done research on this, but it's anecdotal. I think that young people have lost the ability to have conversations, you know, with each other, and to really, like, you know, especially difficult conversations, you know, when they feel hurt, right? Or when they're angry. You know, there's so much avoidance around that. And I just think it's really unhealthy. And then people don't learn, oh, actually, I can have those hard conversations. And like, I'm still okay. I haven't fallen apart. You know, oh, and you're still my friend? What? Wait.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's part of it.
It's interesting that because it sounds like to me, it's almost like we have this ability to really put forth the best image that we can, and we can be more deliberate about it, you know, just in the writing of a message, you know, like I can construct the perfect message. Yeah. But then when you translate that into an actual conversation, it's just so weird. You know, it doesn't, it's like, I'll just speak, I'm going to go to bed. It's half an hour. I'm done. I can't do this. But you know what I mean? I don't have words. Yeah. I can't find my words. Can I just text it to you?
Yeah. Well, that's true, you know, because you know, like in your brain when you're stressed, right? If your amygdala's firing, you know, the part of your brain that, you know, manages language goes offline, right? So you've heard of the you know, your brain, your cortex has been hijacked, right, by the amygdala.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, if that's firing, then, you know, I can't think clearly. I can't find my words, you know, and that's, you know, designed, right, to like just get us the hell out of
fight
here,
or flight.
Right?
Yeah. Of course.
So that's where, again, like being mindful, slowing down, taking breaths, like, you know, you have to downregulate your fight or flight. You know, you've got to, like kind of put on the brakes, if you will, you know, because if you think about like the fight or flight, or the sympathetic nervous system is like your accelerator in your body, right? If that's revved up, you know, you're not
even present. That's the other thing. You're not present.
You're so worried about how,
you
know, like even me before this podcast, right? I was like, oh God, what if my voice shakes?
You were fucking weird.
You know, like, no, oh my God, my voice is going to shake.
You were not weird, by the way. But I know what you mean. Yeah. And
you know,
you see it in conversations with people sometimes as well, where it's like you can see them kind of trying to anticipate how to have a conversation and anticipate what you're saying, and it just doesn't, there's no flow.
Right. There's no flow. There's no connection. Yeah. I'm all up in my head about this conversation. And so, and I'm worrying, I've got this worry about how you're perceiving me and whether you're judging me, right? Whether I'm smart enough, funny enough, whatever it is, right? And so if I'm all up in there, then I'm not in my body, really, right? So I'm not present, I'm not connected, I'm not like tuned into you, you know.
And was that not the case? Do you feel like it's just more of the case now? Or, I mean, surely, because to me that just sounds like such a, you know, part and parcel part of being a human being. but it's become more exaggerated now.
I don't know. You know, I only have my own experience to compare it to, and kind of growing up in the 80s and what that was like, you know, which, of course there were mean, you know, like
mean people.
Kids were assholes, you know, back then as well. But, so no, it's more like a, you know, again, kind of observations from my own practice, right? Which again is what I can speak to. But also I have 2 teenagers, you know, that are 19 and 16. And, you know, so much of their conversations are just over that platform. And I guess that, you know, I just have to accept that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how it's going to be. And I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to change any of that. But I do, like, I have a real kind of dream, I guess, you know, like a way to bring people together and to get people back to really connecting with each other. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily have to do with, you know, politics or, you know what I mean? Like, we can come together when there's stuff like that going down, right? Like climate change or, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, I mean, in some ways, right? But like, I just, you know, how do we just bring people together to be like kinder and more accepting and more curious about each other? I don't know.
And I have no clue on the answer.
Yeah, can you? Either. Come on.
You want me to solve
Gavin.
the world's problem right now? All right. Pause.
You know, so again, it's sort of pie in the sky, but
do you know what's interesting what you were talking about just with your daughters is that now more than ever, I don't think there's been a bigger generational gap between 2 generations, like our parents and their kids, than there is now. You know, like our experiences growing up is so far removed from any other generations that's ever been. You know, it's like
it really is.
1,000 years ago, yes, I'll teach you how to hunt a deer, and you will hunt deer. You know, and I've been there, we've done that, but now it's just totally new worlds, you know? It's like, just turn your cell phone off. Like, what the fuck? What? No, I'm not going to do that.
That is my lifeline.
Exactly.
Truly.
It's really, I feel weird when I'm without my cell phone. I feel naked. It's very strange. I don't like it, but I feel like it is just I just accept it at the same time. It's just the natural progression of how things are going, you know? And
it's really, you know, like I bitch about technology all the time, you know, and social media and all that stuff, you know, and I'm on it. And, you know, but I will say it's kind of what has saved us, you know, during the lockdown. And
totally.
Right.
100%.
So, you know, I've had to be a little less vocal, I suppose, about that. But I don't know. I just kind of hate the whole, I hate the whole, there's a quote somebody made, but it's something about like how, you know, I'm comparing your highlight reel to my behind the scenes.
Ah, that's very interesting.
Which I like. And it's so true, you know, and we get into that, and that causes a hell of a lot of pain for people. You know, comparison, right?
It's that FOMO.
Thief of joy.
Yeah, very true.
Quoting, I think that's Nelson Mandela.
Comparison is
Not
the thief of joy. But
comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's what I think was so great about lockdown is like I knew everybody else was in like the same shitty boat as me. You know, so it's just like, all right, we're all in this together. Yeah, sweet. No one's doing better. Yeah, you know, and that's
I'm not missing out on anything.
I didn't feel. Yeah, it was very surreal. It was just like, oh yeah, no, we're all doing this. Yeah, you know, and it was just that. Yeah, that lack of FOMO. I hate that word, fear of missing out. It sounds so tacky, that acronym. But nonetheless, like that's exactly what it was. It was just like none of that.
Yeah, and I stayed working throughout that, and was just.
Was it via Zoom?
Yeah.
How was that?
Well, it wasn't Zoom. I used some other platform.
Like
that
Jitsu or something.
Doxy was the one I used. Yeah. Oh shoot! I forgot to cancel my. Anyway.
Is there someone waiting on you?
No, not an appointment, a subscription. But then I'm like, no, I did it. Okay. It was tiring.
I can imagine.
Oh my God, I felt so tired at the end of the day. Because it's, you know, you don't always have the best connection, and it's really hard to like really tune into people on when all you can see is like that much of them, right? So, because I pay attention a lot to the body and like how people are holding themselves and like what's going on, and you know, use that as information, you know, as to what they're experiencing emotionally. And, I couldn't see it, right? And so don't know if, I did my best work, but I did the best I could.
It's better than nothing.
And people wanted to keep the sessions going. They wanted that connection and that probably structure, but I did hear quite a few people talk about like feeling useless, and we also had this weird threat, right, that we couldn't see, right, and we couldn't do anything about, so people kind of went, oscillated between, feeling like really, hyper aroused and like,
very
fight
anxious.
Or flight, right?
Sure.
Or just like helpless and shut down. So very hypo aroused. So it's just trying to get people into like, a zone that was a bit, that was comfortable for them. And then that was in the beginning, right? And then as time went on, people kind of found their groove like we all did,
I fell apart near the end.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Near the end you did? Yeah?
It was weird. Like for the first, like not in like a bad way. I just turned into like such a slob,
Yeah.
For like the first 4 weeks, I was working out every morning.
Yeah.
Going for walks, doing my thing.
Yeah.
But then near the end, I was just like, I don't care anymore. Don't look at me. It was so bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
That's so true. I cleaned the shit out of my cupboards during the first couple weeks.
Oh yeah, near the end, you're like, no, fuck that. Someone else can do it. Someone else do it. We all live in this house.
Yeah. And somehow my dog put on weight. I don't understand that because they were getting all the walks all the time, right? But they couldn't go off lead, so they couldn't run. So maybe that was it. But what I found is coming out of it, people feel a bit, I don't know, there's been some kind of like vibe of like feeling let down in a way. Like,
really?
Wait, I thought there was going to be a new realization and we were all going to change and like the world was going to be a better place coming out of this, and we were all going to be like slower and kinder and more patient with each other. And then it's like, oh no.
Yeah, no. Back to square one.
So I don't know. I haven't seen any major shifts with how people are living, but I don't know.
No one's overseas.
What have you noticed? Yeah.
I think for me, overall, I thought lockdown was really good because like I just got this weird sense of appreciation of being by myself and like trusting myself to be productive when I had full autonomy of my own time.
Yeah.
I came out of lockdown really like I think I got a lot out of it, which is really nice. But I don't think there's been like a huge societal shift or anything like that within New Zealand at least, and I can only speak to that.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, that's very strange. Hey, I wanted to talk to you really quickly about like what's the reasoning behind this whole. I guess people are, programmed to go for the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. And it's like the idea of like, I can just take a pill for a lot of my problems.
Yeah.
Is that, and I understand there's like 100% a place for taking pills where it can level somebody out and then allow you then at that level state to then work on things.
Sure.
But what's obviously you can say big pharma, but do you think there's like a thing behind maybe the wrong people having the ability to prescribe pills? Because in your profession, you're not able to prescribe things, right? But you can recommend to a doctor to then prescribe
people just need to go to their GP initially, right? And GPs can prescribe, antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. Usually if it's something more severe, right? Like, psychotic symptoms or things like that, or manic type symptoms, you would refer them on to a specialist, psychiatrist, or even people that struggle with ADD or ADHD. GPs can't initially prescribe that medication.
Isn't it incredibly easy though to get like an ADD prescription? It doesn't.
I don't know.
I know friends who've like tried gaming the system just to get Ritalin.
Yeah.
And,
I think. It's probably true.
One of my friends like researched it, and you probably don't want to hear this, but
no, I don't mind.
But he was like, he researched everything on Google, and then he went into like he didn't get it, but he went into the consultation. I have such a hard time like focusing, and he kept like looking around. He's like a totally normal guy, Yeah, I just get distracted all the time. And then he was like, I can't prescribe it. I was like, oh, what? What do you mean? And he just turned fully level-headed right afterwards. So dumb.
That's a crack up.
But like, aren't you in a sense like more qualified than a GP to prescribe something? Not necessarily in like a purely academic sense, but just knowing the individual and knowing what would be best for them.
No.
You don't think so?
No. No, because I don't, I think I don't have the training,
Sure.
or the medical background. I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that I would be qualified for that. In this book that I brought with me.
Lost Connections.
Yeah, Lost Connections by Johann Hari.
Nice.
Right? Even if you just picked up and read the first chapter, or the first couple of chapters about...
Read the whole thing. Go for it.
He talks about the wand, right? And how, back in like the 1700s, there was a guy who, promised to cure people's pain with this metal wand that he had, right? And initially it took effect, right? And then other people replicated it, and they wrapped a piece of wood in metal and they waved that over people, and that took effect as well. There was nothing curative about a piece of wood wrapped in metal, nor was there about his wand, but it was, kind of the discovery of the placebo effect.
Sure.
Right? And so he talks a lot in the book about how the belief in these drugs working also plays a role, right, in their effectiveness. So that's interesting. It's a thought-provoking commentary on antidepressant medication, how studies are published, which, yeah.
Yeah. No.
I don't want to say too much because
spoilers.
I think, but I also think, there are definitely people that have benefited.
Absolutely.
From taking antidepressant medication. So, I don't ever, if that's what people want to do, that's their choice, and there is a place for it, but I do think that often, and I do commiserate with GPs that are, they're the front line, that's where people are told to go. And so GPs get people coming in that just feel desperate and they want to be able to help or do something, and so I think that is often, what they do to try to offer something to their patient, so, and I also appreciate that it costs $5 for a prescription.
Sure. Yeah.
And that therapy is more expensive and more difficult to access.
Yeah.
And I as someone who works in private practice, struggle with that a bit.
Sure.
Because I used to work when I was in the States, I worked in a community mental health treatment center, and then also a dual diagnosis treatment center, working with people that, were often homeless and, severely mentally ill. And, so we offered services to people who couldn't afford it, and that felt good.
Quite rewarding.
Yeah. But I'm not going to be apologetic for
no, of course not. No,
charging a certain fee.
Sure. Yeah. No, I totally get it. I think in New Zealand too we have EAP. Is that correct? Which is that fully government funded, or is it organization funded? That's
usually the EAPs. There's different EAPs in New Zealand, and so they're usually they're a business that has contracts with other businesses, right? With government, and so it's depending on who you work for, you may or may not have an EAP access, but yeah, that's certainly been beneficial to a lot of people.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say. Oh, here, just for when I was talking about like a fee for service, right? Like
yes.
I work privately, and I've had a few people say that they pay me to care, which
that's very interesting.
It's so. Well, I pay you, so you have to care about me.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, it's. I say that
that's not really what you
pay me for the expertise.
Sure.
And the skills and the knowledge, but the caring part is free. Right? So, like, I'm going to care about you, regardless, even if you can no longer afford to see me, I will still care about you because you're a human being and I've had a relationship with you. And so you are in my, I hold you in my mind or my heart, but I do find that a tricky, dilemma sometimes.
Yeah.
But I have to, I also have to hold that boundary. I can't say, oh no, you don't have to pay me anymore.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. Well, no, it's like a line and then you keep pushing back till it's just like, okay, well, what am I doing now?
Yeah.
Well, I think that actually ties into that's all I want to talk about, whereas more like, who's the therapist for the therapist? I guess is like the easiest way that I can say.
That's a good question. Well, we are required to have supervision, right? And so I do go and see someone every month where I review cases, or review my client work, my therapy. But supervision's not the same as therapy. So, I have gone to therapy and when I've had things that I struggle with, so, but we have to, we have to pay attention, right?
Of course.
As to, when this, because we're human beings, right? Like, that's a thing. Like, I hate this idea of like, people seeing a therapist as someone who's, got all of her shit together.
Yeah,
right?
it's
or who's
so
all
true,
knowing and who's, omniscient and, I don't want that pressure.
Sure.
Right? I don't want to be seen as like, always coping perfectly because I don't.
Sure. And it's an unrealistic expectation, I think, to have on anybody, you know?
Yeah.
And it ties back into the whole thing where it's like, your highlight reel is, the back end of my life. And it's very true. It's like, I don't think we should idolize anybody in that sense, because then it creates this weird expectation of, well, this person has it all good.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle had this weird line where he was saying, my life's good. It's like, it's like an outdoor pool good. It's like, I got a pool, but it's outdoor,
right.
and
I like
it's
that.
everyone's, it's just, it's exaggerated now where we can see everything. We can see like somebody having like a great life and everything's good. And but do you find like, can you self-diagnose as like, if you're like a therapist, right? Can you like sit yourself down and just run through everything? Or do you find like there's much more, you get a lot more out of actually like talking to somebody and...
Oh, definitely. I mean, I can be aware of and, kind of mindful of the stuff going on in my own head, but I can't, like if there's stuff that's really lodged in there, then I definitely would benefit from talking it through with someone else, know? So, but yeah, you definitely try to apply, what you help other people with,
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of just exaggerates once again the thing where it's like, verbal communication is so key over just like texting and being removed in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild. Do you find a lot of people like who get into therapy are in themselves? Do you know what I mean? Like, because when I went to university, I did like a few philosophy papers, and I think some of the philosophy papers would complement a
psychology degree.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I found like a lot of the people that were doing it were like, I'm going to figure myself out. Yeah. That's what I'm doing right here. Do you find that's the case?
Oh, probably, it's sort of a joke in the field, right? That most people that go into psychology are doing it exactly for those reasons. I think for me, so it's funny you said philosophy because that was my minor.
Classic. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did psychology as a major and then sociology and philosophy as a minor. So I basically, after my bachelor's degree, could work as a waitress.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, me too. Literally, my BA, major in history. Right. It's like my career. It's history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so I did do that after after I finished my bachelor's degree for about a year, and then decided to apply to graduate school and went back.
For master's.
Yeah, I went for a master's in counseling psychology. But I had my own kind of struggles as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old that I think got me curious about psychology. And, I wanted to, initially I had quite a feminist sort of bend and wanted to like empower every young teenager, teenage girl on the planet, I didn't end up there. I ended up working with, drug addicts and, people that were severely mentally ill. So, but no, I can't say that. Actually, I just skipped a whole bunch. I did work I did my internship in a rape, spouse abuse crisis center, and also worked at a domestic violence shelter when I started graduate school. So I put in, that was where that was tough work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, geez. Yeah, I can imagine that's intense. Gee whiz.
Gee whiz.
Wow. Yeah. Well, God, that's it's I wanted to also ask you, like, do you find people get addicted to therapy?
Addicted
to, and it's almost because like there's something because I've seen a therapist before, and there's something so it's almost like meditation, where for some reason talking about yourself for an hour just feels so good.
It's so indulgent, isn't it? Right?
And you come out of it
in quotes, indulgent.
Yeah, but you come out of it like, oh, I don't really know anything, but I feel amazing right now.
Well, but I do think that is a reflection of our need to really feel seen by another person.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, of course.
Like, we have that need inherently, right? Like we're born with it. Watch Still Face Experiment on YouTube. It's about, they did this experiment with babies and their moms, and they put these babies, in their little high chair, and mom was like tuning into them, and like they were going back and forth doing that, symbiotic reciprocal relationship thing. And then they had the mom turn around, and then she came back around and she gave the baby a still face, no facial expression, nothing. And the baby lost its shit, right? Because the baby's like, where'd you go? This is, and so it got really dysregulated, which just goes to show you that, like, if we don't have that from a young age, right, then we don't really develop a sense of ourselves, right? Because we need our parents, our caregivers, to reflect back to us who we are, not who they need us to be, but who we actually are, right? And so I think that's the cool thing about therapy. When you go to therapy, hopefully that's what the therapist is doing, is reflecting back to you, who they see in you, seeing what you feel, understanding what you think and how you got there.
And actually being heard.
Being heard, yeah, totally. So people leave therapy and they're like, it's like a dopamine hit, right? So you get, it's like, oh, this does feel good. This, So can people get addicted to it? I don't know. I mean, I do have people that I've seen for long-term therapy, right? I wouldn't say they're addicted to it. I would just say that, or dependent on it, like that's the other thing I think people get afraid of, is like, if you're doing long-term therapy, aren't you just, promoting dependency on you as the therapist? And I don't see it that way. I think, usually those individuals that come for long-term therapy have had a lifetime of trauma, and like that, if that's what you've experienced, like it takes a good year or two to just develop trust in the therapist. Sometimes, even if you're the most, attuned, trusting, empathic therapist on the planet, the client can be hardwired not to trust, so they're always looking for how you're going to hurt them.
Sure, it's that confirmation bias as well.
Totally, right?
It's like, I've been predispositioned to not trust anybody. I'm looking for that excuse to not trust you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So like I've actually had people that I've worked with that have had a lot of trauma, and they will react to like a certain tone of my voice that to me felt, innocuous, or, I wasn't even aware of, or a certain look on my face or whatever. And it reminds them of
a certain situation.
Yeah,
of course.
Because we've got this little spidey sense called neuroception.
I haven't heard. Explain that.
So neuroception is basically perception outside of awareness, and like it's a bodily felt sense.
Is that the sixth sense? Is that kind of?
No, not necessarily. I don't know if that's. It's more of a. It's a neuroscientific term for how our body picks up on signals of danger,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or safety, right? So Stephen Porges, he has created something called the polyvagal theory. He's this really smart neuroscientist guy. And he came up with this term of where if I'm with another person and they sound a certain way or look a certain way, and I've had that experience in the past, like my body will pick up on it and it'll give me a signal
Mm-hmm.
of like, this is dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
you know, get away, or, you know, or no, they're safe, move towards. So, you know, but we don't know that we have that. We're just like, I don't know why, but
Sure.
for whatever reason, I'm not comfortable with this person. But it's like, oh, it's because my body is giving me a signal, and I need to learn to listen to it and question it sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I have this with doctors. I find
Yeah.
with a lot of just medical professions in general, even like a physio.
Yeah.
Because when I was younger, I had quite a few operations. I had born with like 3 kidneys, so I had to have 1 kidney
Oh
removed.
my God!
Yeah, at a very young age. It was like some very major surgery.
Wow.
And I had that, pocketed it in the memory bank, sure.
Yeah.
But then almost every time I go see a doctor now, or even like if I've got some issues with my knee, because I'm seeing like a physio for that, I just get so emotional. And I feel like crying every time I go in there. And it's the weirdest thing. And then I was talking to my mom about this, and she was saying, well, the reason behind it probably is because of all the crazy stuff that's happened when you were younger.
Right.
And it's just buried in there. And
Implicit
even though
memory.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I am fully aware of it happening.
Yeah.
I see it happening. I'm there. I'm like, okay, yes, this is, and it's just weird because it just takes control, you know, and it's just like, it's still happening. I'm like, oh, I know why this is happening too.
Yeah.
But,
So what I would do with that, if you were telling me about this, right, is I would want to know, like, what is the belief that you have about yourself when you feel that in your body?
Yeah.
Like, what's the negative?
I feel like I have to justify. This is like a free counseling session for me. I'm not even recording right now. It's all a ruse. I think with the belief, I feel like I have to convince the person that there's something wrong with me.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is very strange, you know? And it's like...
Otherwise what?
They're going to think I'm lying. You know,
Like you're not going to see that my pain is real.
Very strange. You know, it's like, I've got this issue with my knee, and it's like, okay, can you describe the symptoms? Like, oh God, okay, I got to explain the symptoms properly, or they're going to think I'm faking it and wasting their time.
Wasting their time,
which is very interesting. Yeah, I don't know why that is. You know?
Yeah.
We'll break it down off air.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, wasting their time. What is it
Very
about
strange.
wasting their time?
Yeah, but maybe it comes back to like not feeling like I'm worth their time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because that was my next question. Well, if you're wasting their time, then what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would that mean?
My first like reaction is to be like, oh, I'm cutting in front of somebody else. But I don't give a crap. That's not the case. I don't care. You can wait. There's a screaming baby in this lobby. I was here for 20 minutes. Yeah, no.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but no, it's just like an example of like this weird thing where it's like almost like the younger years of your life. First, I guess 25 until your like brain fully develops. But I think like the first 18, someone was telling me like your personality crystallizes between the age of 15 and 18, you know? And so, it's like the building blocks and the foundations of your life are so influential on the next 70 years of your life. And it's almost like it comes down to like not changing how you think about things, but living with it, you know, and like recognizing like there's a barrier here. How do I work around it rather than trying to remove that barrier as a whole? Yeah.
I'll give you a little, I guess, abbreviated explanation. So if you think about, how the sense of self is shaped, right? It's generally shaped by, interactions that we have early on in life with caregivers or significant others, peers, teachers, whoever's in our immediate life, right? And so if you think about, let's just say a child who lives with a really angry parent, right? Or parents. So often their interactions are marked by hostility from the parents, right? that child's sense of self is going to be, I'm bad because I evoke hostility from other people. There must be something wrong with me. I'm bad. And other people are hostile, right? So that becomes kind of a core belief in the child, right? And so then they develop strategies to deal with that. So maybe one strategy is to be perfect or always be good, right? And so then that shapes the sense of self, because underneath that is that underlying belief, I'm bad. So a compensatory strategy would be to be really good. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and I imagine when that gets shattered, like you get in trouble, it's very...
It's devastating for people.
Sure.
Right? And, it makes people live in fear that they're going to be found out, that they're actually really bad. But the bad, it's just a label, right? That's put on, to explain what happened, right? Like what actually happened was I had all these experiences and memories where, I was yelled at or beaten or whatever it might be, right? So the way I've made sense of it, right? Because we like to make sense of things. So we construct a story, right? So the story is I'm bad. Well, to defend against that, I'm going to be good. And I'm going to people please, and I'm going to never say no to people.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I'm just...
No, I totally understand. I'm just thinking
with something
about
really simple.
Yeah, this thing with like perfectionism. Like I know somebody who had these issues with like trying to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And just interesting seeing what you're talking about and where that could potentially come from.
Yeah. Brene Brown. Of course, we couldn't, have a podcast without
of course
referring to Brene Brown. But she has a quote that I like, and it is, whenever perfectionism is in the driver's seat, shame is riding shotgun.
Ooh,
that was a good one, right?
I really like that. Yeah,
because it's a protection against that. Shame is I'm not enough.
Sure.
Right? Or I'm bad, or I'm defective, I'm unworthy. So to get away from that, the answer is to be perfect.
And which is so, as well as that, like this idea of like perfectionism is probably very highly valued as well, especially in this capitalist society.
Totally.
It's like, well, why would I want to address that? In a business world, that is ideal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, even in, I don't know, there's some ways of working with people that are all about striving, right? And like reaching goals and, being excellent.
Hustle, grind, make money, achieve.
All that. Yeah. And it's, to me, it just promotes this notion, right? And it's like, where's good enough? Where's self-acceptance? Where's, like you can still, people, that's often, we started out the conversation talking about the internal critic, right? And so I'll often ask people, what would happen if that wasn't there? So in that moment that you made the mistake, or if you imagine that you could press a button right now and this internal critic wouldn't be there anymore, right? Because you're telling me how much you wish you didn't do it and you don't want it, They always say, oh, but if I didn't have that, I would be totally complacent. I wouldn't strive anymore. It pushes me to be better. And it's like, no, it actually doesn't, because like I said, if you have a loud internal critical voice, you're going to be in fight or flight a lot of the time, right? And if you're in fight or flight a lot of the time, that's going to impair your performance actually rather than enhance it. So if you can have more self-compassion, that's really the antidote, to self-criticism or to shame. Is like, if I struggle with something, but I can relate to myself in a compassionate way, like I would to my best friend if they made the same mistake, I'm going to be far better off. I'm not going to be so anxious. I'm not going to be so depressed because I'm kind of on my own side. It's kind of like having your own back. Yeah,
it's interesting to the idea of like the whole motivation and the driving force.
Yeah,
where it's like you can have different types of drivers.
Yeah,
and I guess somebody
like you need an encourager, right? Or like a cheerleader, or I often get people to like imagine, like working on developing another part of themselves, right? That could be there and kind of or how we could kind of transform the self-critic, like, okay, this is what the self-critic would say. What if we gave it more of an encouraging quality?
It's like the devil and the angel on the shoulder, right?
Like what would be different about how you would talk to yourself? Because so much of what keeps us stuck in our patterns is the way we relate to ourselves, right? Like we make a mistake, we self-flagellate, we're right back to square one if I'm not good enough, So if you think about like that, if I have the core belief, I'm not enough, I have the protective mechanism, I'll be perfect, right? That's my strategy. And then I make a mistake, right? Or I get burned out. So that's the unintended consequence of your perfectionist, right? Is that, let's just say I get resentful because I say yes to everything and everyone, or I burn out, right? And then I relate to myself like, you're so useless.
Then you're back to square one, and then you just rinse and repeat.
Loop around.
Repeat.
You just loop around. Whereas if you go, it makes sense that you feel really tired right now because you've been pushing yourself so hard. How about we have a bit of a break? That's a good point.
Then you don't go back to that square one. You can progress further and further.
Yeah, exactly.
How interesting. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of a, it's a more compassionate way to relate to yourself and to,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Amy, hey, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries.
That was fun. That was really good.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. All right, well, goodbye.
Bye.
And then I'll just edit the rest out.
Okay.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for listening. That was a blast. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've made it this far, really appreciate that. Thank you. Once again, promo 21st of August, Line 'em Up Comedy Show, and then 23rd, Dope Ass Comedy Show, and then in September, we have the Medicine Comedy Show. Check those out. Apart from that, subscribe, follow, give me all of your attention. Excellent, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good day, afternoon, night, morning. Bye.